Hi, it's Megan, and thank you so much for joining us for episode 5 of Woo as Fuck. This week we are talking about downloads and how each of us receive them and process them and what our process has been like with them. We talk about your partnerships and the relationships in your life and different patterns that you're falling into and ways to address them. We talk about masking and boundaries and consent and how to handle those situations and our personal struggles with it and what we can do to move forward. Um, and we're also talking about our businesses, our respective businesses, and how we're each trying to grow them and step away from old systems and our current progress, just being transparent about where we are and what we're doing. So, hopefully, as you go along your own journey, you can see where we started and where we're growing. And I hope that you guys all enjoy this so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's get into it. Hi, it's Megan.
And it's Lissa, and today we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff today. One of them, downloads.
So we had a few different topics that we wanted to talk about, and really they all kind of relate to one another. So we're just gonna hit them all. Just really go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing we really wanted to talk about was downloads and channeling and the differences between them and how they are for us individually. Because I know personally, when I first kind of was starting this journey and I was connecting with people online, everyone was talking about how they got a message, they had a download, they received this piece of information. And I know I personally felt kind of like out of the loop, like I was a step behind everyone else because I don't know what I thought it was when, people would say that they were connecting with other people or these other entities. I I really didn't know what I thought it was like, but I just knew that I wasn't doing it. And I mean, it came to fruition that I was doing it my whole life. I just didn't understand really what it meant and how personal and individual it is for everyone.
Yeah, it's such a case by case thing. What was it like when you realized that you had been doing it all along and it just wasn't what you originally thought it was?
It really felt like an Oda. Like, of course, this is what it is. Of course, this is how I'm processing it. Of course, it's different for everyone. And most people aren't having it slammed in their face that that is what's happening. A lot of times for me personally, I know most of the time that I'm having a download, but there are times when I look back at it and that's when I realize, when I'm looking at it in retrospect, that that was an external ping.
Yeah, can you say what it's actually like what it's like for you, and then I can talk about what it's like what it feels what like before, during, and after?
For me, when I first started, I guess I'll go back to the very beginning. I had a lot of ringing in my ears all of the time, and it wasn't normal for me. That's not a thing that I would normally have. That's happening right now as I'm saying this, I think, to remind me. So that was kind of my, it got to the point where I got really frustrated, to be honest. And I ended up seeking help from someone and we did like an energy clearing and kind of readjusted how we communicate, to be honest. But that was originally how it started for me. So it was just this really loud ringing in my ears, like, hey, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And I wasn't really connecting with myself, so I wasn't connecting with them. So they just got louder. But normally, outside of that, whenever I have a download, I just know something. So my primary clair for me personally is claircognizance. So I just know things. So sometimes I will get this kind of out there message, or it doesn't have to be out there, but just something that just is very abrupt. That's the way it feels for me. It's not a casual, hey, have you thought about this? It's usually, go outside right now. Do it. This is how this works. It just is like it hits my body. It's kind of sudden and it feels really safe and secure.
Ooh, safe and secure is a great way
Yeah.
of describing it. And isn't it, as someone who has the same dominant Claire, how frustrating is it to have, I
Yeah.
don't know how other people feel, but man, to just know something but not be able to back it up with any type of external source is a real son of a bitch. No, it's like because you just know.
Yeah. And it's not like, if someone else, their primary, because I think it really would start with like what your primary clear is. But for someone else who has something where they can see something or hear something or something that feels tangible, it's different. But for people like us, where you just know things, you kind of have that question of, okay, am I just crazy? Am I making this up? And it's hard to say that because it does feel safe and secure. And if it doesn't feel safe and secure, then you need to evaluate that. Um, Maybe ask who you're speaking with and assess that. But that's a whole other thing.
Well, and I'm hearing too that as, so, okay, well, then this is important because I was just now said, and I'm hearing too, and I want to decipher, is this channeling or is this download or is this just memory? Well, here, let me explain what it is first. So, what I'm sort of seeing, hearing, experiencing is that your alignment with yourself, which is what you were talking about originally, like how clear you are in your authentic self, not the self that you want to be, not the self that you fit in to be, but your actual like core, this is who you are. When you're in alignment with that, downloads are going to be experienced one way with no interference, I guess you could say. But if you're not operating from that real core perspective, then a download may feel uncomfortable, may feel not true, um, and all kinds of different stuff because you're not going to be able to interpret it correctly because you're not seeing clearly. Like you're not able to look at that information clearly.
And I'd like to clarify uncomfortable is different than unwelcome.
Hmm.
Because uncomfortable oftentimes is kind of like you have a friend who calls you out on your shit. And nobody likes to be called out on their shit really in the moment, but you're often thankful for it in reflection. However, sometimes the downloads, if you're not really in alignment, you're on one of your lower dips, which we all have, and it's perfectly normal and part of the process. But when you have those moments where you get a download that feels uncomfortable, I don't know about for everyone, but for me personally, it's usually calling me out on my shit. You are suffering in this moment because you haven't taken the time to shower for more than 2 minutes and actually take care of yourself in 3 weeks. You're not going to feel like yourself until you actually treat yourself like a human being. And I don't always like to hear that because I know it, of course, duh. But I'm getting shit done, and a lot of my examples for me personally are going to be related to me being um, a bit of a workaholic, and that's something that I'm trying to recover from.
Why do you, how does it benefit you? Like, where did that coping mechanism come from to be a workaholic?
Oh, okay. So it really came from having to be a responsible adult for my parents at a very young age, like 4 or 5. I started having to take care of things and take care of myself at a really young age. So I think that for me personally, that kind of instilled this I'm responsible for getting the things done. I'm responsible for making sure it happens. I'm responsible for taking care of other people. And other people's needs kind of were always from that time put above my own. So I will, especially as an adult, especially now, if someone needs something, I will stay up until 2 a.m. to make it happen, but I won't take 5 minutes to shower for days if I'm like on a cycle of trying to help someone else, trying to do these things that feel like obligations. And that's something that I'm working through a lot right now. So I don't know if you anticipated it being that vulnerable and honest of a response, but I really think that's where that comes from for me.
Well, it's so important too because it's like what we do this where I do this too. So I will I'm actually I experienced this today. Like I will clean if one person's going to be in my space, I will make sure it looks great. Uh
Me too. Oh my gosh, if I think someone's going to be here.
uh-huh. And not even and it could even be my partner. Like I'm not a messy person in general, but I have what I've TikTok has taught me are doom piles. So I'm starting to as an adult
Mm-hmm.
realize that I definitely have undiagnosed ADHD, maybe ADD, but probably ADHD. And I just never really paid attention to it before or knew about it. And TikTok is a trip because so much of it is like, oh no. And so what I do is I have organized chaos in little piles. And then which is fine with me, but then if I know somebody's coming over, I sort of hide that and I just make it not like Pottery Barn, perfect, but it's important to me that it looks a certain way. And what's hilarious is when it's just me at home alone, I'm equally as clean, but I don't hide those little, like, I don't know, like right now upstairs, I have 3 suitcases of just clothes everywhere. And last
Yeah.
night, I was feeling a panic to unpack everything, thinking to myself, for who? For why? What? Isn't that strange? Like, why would I feel the need to do that? But it's because other people are going to be in my presence. And if it was, and then I realized, well, no, it's only me tonight. And then it was like sort of the relief of not having to do anything. So I think that you and I both definitely have heavy programming when it comes to meeting other people's needs. And then just not even a lack, but just an uneducated on how to pay attention to our needs.
Yeah, so TikTok has also, and I'm sure it has for a lot of people, it immediately picked up on the fact that I might have some undiagnosed ADHD as well, which I never really considered, to be honest. But whenever I started seeing other people's stories and their experiences, there were so many things like the doom piles um, that I was definitely doing. So it's really kind of nice to know that other people have it too. And if I have company coming, like, well, let's get real. So because of the pandemic, I've not had anybody to my house in almost 2 years. So I haven't had that panic. Companies coming super awesome, basically pristine because I am like, I literally walk through my house if I have company, especially if they're a new company, and I'll like pretend that I'm walking through as someone who's like coming to my home for the first time. And so I start paying attention to like all of the baseboards and all of the like little areas that you just like you kind of, especially like I've got a place on my counter that is where mail goes to die. You know, the mail that's like important enough to keep, but not important enough to actually like file or do anything with.
Mm.
So I just have like this place on my counter where everything just lives and that's where it goes to die. And that's not been addressed in almost 2 years. It gets like organized whenever I clean, but it's basically just like put into a neater stack, but it still lives there.
Megan, I need you to. We're male soulmates. Literally, I have not. Oh, you're reminding me. I haven't checked my mail this entire month. I haven't gone to my mailbox yet. And because I haven't gone to my mailbox yet, I'm so afraid at how much is in there that I still haven't gone to it. And before that, I had my mail doom pile that you're talking about. That I wasn't living at my house for a while, so I put it in my trunk and then forgot about it. So I now have the mail in my mailbox that's not been received, and then the mail in my trunk that hasn't been opened. Why do we still get mail? It's so silly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why there's daily mail, to be honest. And I've been really bad about checking my mail too, even though we both work from home. My partner and I both work from home. So you would think that we would check the mail more, but it's still like once a week. And we have the mailbox attached to our house. There's no excuse except for the fact that we have to go outside and get it.
Okay, so speak of download. So this is a download. As so sometimes you guys all get downloads and metaphors, and what I'm hearing right now, and I say when I say hearing, I'm not literally hearing anything. Maybe this is part
Oh,
of what
yeah.
So it is.
And maybe that's because I say hearing, and sorry to interrupt you, but I
Right.
say hearing personally, and I do it too, even though I'm not hearing anything, because it feels better than saying, oh, I just suddenly know or understand this thing. And maybe
Mhm.
that's a form of masking, which is something we were going to talk about later.
Absolutely. Well, let me describe it exactly how it's happening, and then the listeners can decide for themselves what it means, or like how that comes in. So Megan's talking about mail, and I'm knowing that we're talking about downloads. Then I see my box of mail in my mind's eye, and my tub, my like invisible, oh my gosh, clear tub of mail in that might as well be invisible in the trunk of my car. And then I'm seeing a vision of Harry Potter when, oh God, this is so strong. This is such a cool download. So now I'm being shown Harry Potter when he was getting the letter to go to Hogwarts and it wasn't being received, and then eventually it just started flying through his fireplace. Remember that? The
Yeah, I knew exactly. As soon as you said Harry Potter, I knew what you were talking about.
so that I am being guided to it. Being guided means I don't just get metaphors in my brain as very visual, visceral things for no reason. And it usually means something. So then when I'm thinking about it, I'm recognizing that a download or information can come in the same way. But if you don't know what to do with it, if you don't know how to open it, or if it's overwhelming, then it might not make any sense and it might just sort of not be interpreted and could make you feel uncomfortable. However, if you're open and receptive and willing, when that thing comes in, you can have the time and attention and clarity to really look at it for what it is and then incorporate it or explain it. Or do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But if we're blocking ourselves from being able to receive these things in the first place, and now, and well, this was going to be for later, but like if we are not really accepting of what our gifts are because they scare us, and so we're sort of hiding ourselves in a sense from our own gifts, then when something like a download comes in, we might perceive it as anxiety or depression or an actual not so pleasant emotional experience because we're fighting the internal experience.
so I want to say I'm hearing, but I'm going to adopt a message I received while you were saying that was a lot of times. How did it already disappear from my brain? A lot of times, whenever we are experiencing downloads and we're not really understanding them or resistant to them, it does manifest as anxiety or those uncomfortable feelings. But that's really not what I was trying to say. I am blanking on what that was. So it was so strong too. So this happens all the time sometimes, and maybe I wasn't meant to say it the way I was going to say it. It might come back up.
Well, that's another important thing to talk about, though. So and it could also be an ADD thing, which we both have.
Oh, yeah.
But if the frequency of the download that comes in isn't a match to, like, what I think personally is that what you were about to say was something that was more quote unquote high vibe than what I was talking about. So the information was able to come into your consciousness as I'm talking, but then when you go to open your mouth to say it, it's not like we haven't quite worked our way there yet with the energetics of this conversation. So maybe it wasn't ready to be said yet. Because if you did say it, it wouldn't have been received in that way yet.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense because it was definitely looking at it from a more high vibration galactic standpoint, and we're definitely looking more at the like root 3D side of it. So that would make sense.
So, in terms of downloads, so what did we discuss so far? So we kind of talked about, well, it comes in different for everybody, you guys. So based on whatever your dominant clair is, that's going to be how it comes in. So some people are really apt to just hear things, and not like hearing voices necessarily, but maybe you hear running water when there's no water around, or maybe you hear, you know, like a child's voice, and that's reminding you of a memory or something like that. But then there's also feeling, and this is my other predominant one, which I would like to talk about for a second, because I will also get downloads as the actual emotional experience of another human being I'm with. And I'm just now at this stage of the game, which is frustrating because I am 32 years old. I am just now realizing that a lot of what I perceive to be my own emotions are not, and that I'm actually dipping into, and I would like to talk about boundaries with this too. So I unintentionally will dip into the emotional experience of the people around me. And I didn't realize I was doing this until I left for a couple days and got like thousands of miles away from everyone. That might be a stretch. Maybe it was like 500 miles, but regardless. And then I got to sit in my own energy and feel what that felt like. And then I came back and I immediately noticed that around certain people, I was having very familiar emotions that I could now recognize it as not mine. So not only was it not helpful because I wasn't wanting to feel their emotions, but also I was able to see how much drama this had been causing in my relationships because I'm acting as though I'm feeling the emotion of the other person.
All right, so since it's been a few weeks since you had that time to yourself that way, how is that feeling now? Are you still able to identify it as easily as you did when you first came back? And how, like, what changes have you made to adjust to that, I guess would be.
Okay, yeah. So no, I'm definitely not able to see it. Well, I'm having a lot of issues with it actually. So now that I know that that's what's happening, it's very difficult for me to differentiate, is that how you say that word? Between is this theirs or is this mine? I will actually have to ask myself, is this mine? And then in sitting with is this mine, a lot of times I'll get a hit with a yes or a no. And a lot of times it will be, sure, it's mine, but that there's a piece in there that I'm responsible for, but it's not all me.
So it's
And
being influenced by other people.
exactly, yeah. And it's so complicated. And today I actually literally just canceled my yoga class that I was going to go to, which is a huge part of my self-care and my own spiritual practice with my community. But I've been too inundated with other people's energies. I'm not seeing things clearly. I've been motivated and inspired to write every day, and I've been doing that. And then yesterday I didn't write. So today it's super clear to me that I need to do it again, meaning not necessarily go leave, but I am going to go out into the woods today and just spend a bunch of time alone. And I think that that for me is going to need to be a necessary ritual on a weekly basis, at least, so that I can clear my energy in that sense. And I think a big piece of this is me having I'm a codependent, recovering codependent, so I have terrible boundaries anyways, and I'm working on that. But that is also reflected in my energetic boundaries. So it's really up to me to get with it and recognize that it's not serving me or anybody to feel somebody else's emotions. But the first step is being conscious of the fact that that's what I'm doing. And then also recognize that that's a gift, right? That is a gift and can be very helpful if I'm in a session with a client and I ask them, is it okay if I tune into your energy so I can get a better perspective of the whole picture? In which case I can. And then I see things from the perspective of not only that individual, but I can zoom out and look at maybe how, their mother's feeling or like the whole family unit. And I can understand these deep in what's the word? Intricity in what's that word? Like fine-tuning parts of these relationships and dynamics that are really helpful when I'm working with a client. But if I'm just talking to my partner about where do you want to eat, and he's frustrated with me because I can't make up my mind about something, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, why am I so frustrated? Like, I have no reason I must be hungry. Am I hungry? Why am I so pissed off right now? And it's not even
I just had that argument with my partner yesterday over ice cream. And it's like we don't fight very often, but he wanted ice cream. I stopped to get ice cream. I asked him if he wanted to get ice cream to eat there or to take home, and somehow that turned into us both being really frustrated for no good reason. And I think that's really funny how often any couple or any, individuals that spend a lot of time together will get frustrated over food,
Mm-hmm.
something that is so insignificant. And I had to tell him, like, it's okay. I'm not frustrated because you're saying it's whatever I want. I'm frustrated because I'm trying to connect to you and I want to see what you want so that we are both like getting things that we want. I'm not trying to like make you make the decision. And I think it's the making the decision, I think, is the frustration for us.
And let's unpack this ice cream for a minute, because this really is what I've been experiencing with my partner too. And it's important because, okay, you guys, oh my gosh. So now I'm getting all kinds of information to explain to you about these circumstances. So, we are, uh, the most recent video I did on Patreon is about this, and it's very important. And oh my gosh, you guys, it might be worth it to sign up just for this video, because there's really me putting on a slip. You know, a slip? Don't worry, I'm fully clothed. But like a slip that you wear over top of a dress. There's me
Yeah.
putting a slip on and like incorrectly and flapping my arms about trying to explain how this is how we're integrating our light body.
I hadn't watched that yet, and now I was already excited, and now I'm really excited because Lissa and I post to our Patreon separately, and then usually like in a day or so, the other watches it. And I've actually been like commenting on her videos as the Patreon, and I'll say like, Megan here, this was really cool.
Yeah, we're going to be doing that because we use the same account. So as we comment on stuff, we'll just be signing like with whoever's commenting. But that really is what's so this light body that we are integrating, the way that I keep seeing it, and again, this is on the Patreon, but I'll reiterate because it is important. The way that I keep seeing it, and Megan, I know that as I talk, you're going to be getting information about this because this is really your wheelhouse and your domain of what you do and you're in the grid space. But the light body exists much like a sheath or a sheet or a slip, if you will, over top of our 3D body, only it exists as pulsating light. And it exists in the feeling space of this 5D awareness. So when you activate this body that exists over top of you, but not really because it's beyond space-time, it's more in, out, and all around you, at first, it's really glitchy as fuck. It like doesn't make any sense, and it's not put on correctly. And not that there is a correct way, but it's very much like grabbing a piece of clothing, shoving it on, and then being like, wait, this isn't like, I can't move my appendages. This isn't right. And then over time, through working with it, you're able to really align it to fit and to match. But right now, what we're having is we're having higher dimensional experiences through activation of this light body that is us, that's kind of coming on and coming off to a degree, depending on how tapped in we are. I'm being told it's always on. And by being told, I mean, they're showing me a image of the light body's always on, like always glowing, but it's the human's awareness to the degree that they're able to tap into it. So anyways, let's talk about food and the partner, right? If I am existing in this as this multidimensional being, moderately aware of my light body consciousness that exists throughout multiple dimensions, we are really getting woo as fuck right now. And I'm having a conversation with my partner about food. And I'm, because I do this, I'm on your husband's camp, which is, I have never been single in my entire life. The longest I've made it is maybe 3 weeks. And I'm now at a point in my life where I understand that doesn't have to be negative or unhealthy. It's really about how I act in the now with my partner. Am I growing? Am I healing? Am I working on my stuff? Or am I using partners to numb out? You know, and there is a difference, and I've done both. So when I'm sitting with him and I'm talking about food, and he asks me, well, where do you want to eat? Because he wants to connect with me. He does the same thing. And I say, I don't know, wherever you want. What I'm saying is, I don't really know how people quickly go inwards and decide the multifaceted conversation of what does my body need? What do my taste buds want? What is available in our general vicinity? And what might my partner also enjoy, it feels very overwhelming to me. So it's easier for me to just go, well, what do you want? Because food is food to me, and you really like certain foods, and I'm just starving. So anything's good, really. But then he wants to connect with me. So now my light body's activated because I'm connected to this individual on a very deep level. And I am now in my gut, in my very like gut center, experiencing frustration and anger. And my brain will tell me, well, it's because I'm hungry. So we better pick a place to eat quick so I don't have to be hungry anymore. So I don't have to experience this frustration and anger anymore. So I will then project onto my partner, I really just need to find a place to go right now. Can we please just eat? I will eat anything. Take me to a 7-Eleven. Well, now my partner who's trying to really connect with me to figure out what it is that I want so that he can meet those needs, maybe even later on, right? Maybe if he knew that, yellow Thai curry was my favorite meal of all time, he could secretly surprise that with me one day. And he is a really romantic at heart. So point being, that's what this suit is like that we're wearing now, where it's like we have these deeper capacities to really understand each other at a deep, deep level, but they're not integrated yet. So it's really important for us to take the time and go, where's the boundary here? Because also in that experience, he has not given me permission to experience his feelings. He has not given me permission. I realize I've been rambling for a second here, but this is equally as important. My partner is telepathic. And I've known this our entire relationship. He's just now kind of coming to the realization of this. And he, in one discussion we were having, articulated my feelings to me because he, quote unquote, knew I was hiding something. Well, what I was hiding was a realization about, not a realization, was like something that I was not aware of consciously yet. So he had the ability to articulate to me something I had not consciously thought about yet, but was true because he can pick up on it in that energetic space. Now, just like me picking up on his frustration and anger with me emotionally, he is able to pick up on my thoughts telepathically. In both of those situations, neither of us gave the other permission to do that. So he is not necessarily feeling violated in me experiencing his emotions in the moment because neither one of us knows that that's what's happening. But I certainly felt violated in him expressing my own thoughts to me because it felt like somebody was in my brain. Like when someone goes through your phone without asking, it's like, ugh. So it's sort of like we're all in kindergarten again,
Yeah. So I think right now where all of us have, like, as we're doing the work, we're becoming aware. I want to say coming online to things, but it's always been there. But we're becoming more aware of these different abilities that we have. We're becoming more aware of things. Sometimes you'll just like not even know that something was coming to you or that you were becoming aware of something, and just suddenly it happens. Um, and I remember it was, I don't know, a month or two ago, I remember telling Lissa about it. I was becoming more in tune with things, and I walked into a public space. It was one of the first times I'd really been in a public space because I'd been home for so long. And I immediately felt frustration from everyone around me because my energy was taking up so much space that it was in their own energetic jello. And I wasn't asking for consent to be that close to all of those people. And it felt really uncomfortable for me, but I wasn't really sure how to handle it.
Can you sort of, I'm sorry, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Because I can kind of understand what you're talking about, but I feel like I'm getting a visual as you're talking.
Mm-hmm. So because I was around all of these people and I hadn't really been in that, like, around that many people in a while, a year and a half or so, and I'd trying to figure out how to explain this. So, like, I was picking up on everyone else's energies. I was picking up on everyone else's emotions, not thoughts necessarily, but like I could feel what they were feeling, and I didn't have consent to connect to any of those people, but I also didn't have control over it. And that's one of those things where we're all learning these new things, we're becoming aware of these new things, we're tapping into these new energy sources. and we don't know that we're doing them, let alone how to control them or
Hmm.
ask for that consent or set those boundaries. And it can be really overwhelming when you feel those feelings. Um, I actually want to circle back around to the partner thing because I want to talk about consent with a partner or someone that you're like around a lot, a friend, a coworker, or whatever, energetic consent. And then I also want to talk about how we can maybe adopt some change of verbiage to help with those frustrating moments, like when you're looking for food.
Ooh, I like that.
So, as far as consent in general, if you can at all ask for consent before connecting to someone's energy, it is great. Or maybe you do connect to someone's energy without consent. I actually had this happen with a client I was working with where I tapped into their energy and I could feel the way they were feeling. And when it happened, I said, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I accidentally connected to your energy without consent. Because we're having this conversation, it might happen again. Do I have your consent to move forward?" Which is something you can do, obviously, but just acknowledging it is really good. But how do you handle it with like a partner or someone that you're around daily? You can't ask them for consent daily, right?
I'm thinking about this. Can you, well, in the moment of the conversation, you
Yeah.
can, I suppose, but it's also, why am I talking like a robot? I'm being like, it's also, it's one thing to, it's one thing to ask somebody externally, like with your voice, like, do I have your permission? It's another thing to also ask energetically, like, does this feel okay? Do you think that both are necessary?
I think it might be circumstantial. So if you're in a conversation with someone that's a little bit heavier, say you're talking about a partner, about a boundary that you're having, or something maybe where you're going to be connecting with them on a few different levels, maybe taking that moment to ask them and kind of make sure that they're feeling okay. Or sometimes, like, even in the middle of a conversation, I might step back and say, "How are you feeling?" Um, but what I'm struggling with trying to figure out is like just on the day to day, because when you're with a partner daily, you're going to feel those feelings, you're going to have those energetic flows, and it's important because you're connecting to them, but it's also important to like gauge, maybe I just need to offer them some yellow curry.
But first, she's got to be able to tell you she likes the yellow curry.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally, totally. I get it. Um, it's tricky. It's so multifaceted, you guys, and it's so multi-layered. And I really do think that we're going to get to the point, like what I see is in the future, these bodies, it really is online, Megan. Like what you're talking about, that's
Yeah,
exactly
it's all online. We're connecting with it on a different level and we're learning as we go, and sometimes it's really cool, sometimes it's a little unnerving. But what you're saying, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that as we are all collectively tapped into this, or most of us are, or we're in communities where everyone's connected to it, you would be able to set those boundaries yourself energetically to where you could say, no, no one can tap into me right now, or these few people can tap into me and they can tap into this. But we have to learn how to do that. Was that what you were going to say?
you did it. Yes. You knew what I was going to say before I was going to say it. Yes. And we have an example of that actually, because a community that both you and I are a part, I don't know if you saw this, but there's a community that we're a part of where a woman was expressing how she was on a live, like somebody's live reading, tarot reading, and she can see people's auras and can tap into energy. Oh, this is a good example. I'm happy I remembered this.
That's
So,
actually what made me think about talking about boundaries, to be honest.
oh, okay, perfect. Well, this, I think it's important to talk about this because it was such a beautiful example of somebody who meant no harm, was operating within her gifts, but forgot, or rather was not conscious in that moment, that these gifts, guys, just because you have a jet plane doesn't mean you want to be traveling and using all your money to go all over the place, you know what I mean? Like, just because you have a certain gift or have a certain ability doesn't mean you want to be implementing it all the time. So this woman can see auras and can read auras. And she was watching a live of a woman that was doing a reading, and she noticed something happening with this woman's aura. Now, this is where I was really clear. It's so funny because you would think that the codependent with the lack of boundaries would also struggle in recognizing boundaries in other people and circumstances, but I'm actually great with that. And I can even do like communication coaching to express your own boundaries. It's just hard for me to do it in my own life. Figures. So the experience of seeing this woman's aura and just operating in your gift that way, seeing something, I don't feel any boundaries were crossed. But then what happened is she started to have internal questions about this woman's aura. And so answers were coming to her because that's one of her gifts. As soon as that happened, the woman who had no idea or no external validation, rather, that this was going on, looked at the camera, and there's a live stream of many people, and said, "Stop, you do not have permission to read my aura." And then shut down and blocked this girl. And this woman felt really bad that that happened, because she wasn't intending anything malicious at all. But at the same time, it's really important that the other woman who did turn it off and block her to protect her own energy, because clearly she had an awareness of how her energetic body was being interpreted, and she is able to maintain her own autonomy over that. And it's important that we respect that, because when you can read people's energy and read people's aura, you can easily see things that maybe somebody doesn't want you to see. Just like a phone. Like, really think about a phone. If I hand my phone to a friend to make a phone call, that's one thing. If my friend starts flipping through my notes or whatever and reading those, that's a very different thing. So in that example, the seeing the aura wasn't a boundary crossing. It was the implicit and unintentional questions from that, where you could easily then backtrack and go, "Oh, that's right, I'm not asking questions, I'm just here to observe." And furthermore, that woman who was online doing the reading could have also taken extra measures to prevent people from reading her energy in the first place. So it's a two-way street. But what an interesting time to be alive, because we're literally figuring out new rules in all of our relationships about energetics, because we're learning how to be in our own power, source our energy from actual source energy, not leech off other people's energy unintentionally, and not give away our energy unintentionally. But all of these things happening all at once is quite the dance.
It is really cool and exciting and overwhelming, all kind of wrapped into one. But here's what I am going to recommend, and take it or leave it. This is just what I think I will be doing moving forward. So, for someone who I am in regular communication with, so whether that be my partner or my friends or whoever that I have daily or frequent contact with, have a conversation with them about how you're feeling, the way that you're tapping in, what their boundaries are, what your boundaries are, and kind of establish, like, just have that open dialogue. What works for each of you? You know, if things were to come up, how do you want me to approach it? As far as consent goes, what works for you or what doesn't work for you. And then remember, especially, I do this with you a lot, Lissa, is if I tap into your energy, because I tap into yours all the time, and I usually tell you, like, as soon as it happens, but maybe, like, remember to return their energy to them. So, like, if we have a really deep conversation where we're pinging back and forth off of each other, because I don't want to stop that flow, because I level up and learn a lot of things in the moment, and I know you do too. It's just at the end I say, I ground myself and I recalm my energy and I return that person's energy to them with love. I make sure to do anytime I have any sort of, like, contact with someone. But have those conversations with the people in your life that you are regularly in contact, and try to establish those boundaries. And for people within the community that are open to it, or maybe other people in your life, you might have to adjust your verbiage. If you're experiencing that where you tap in unintentionally, maybe just take the moment to acknowledge it. Read the room, obviously, acknowledge it, and try not to, like, pry further into it without consent. So it's one thing to say, I feel like currently you're experiencing some anxiety, and then kind of acknowledging it and going from there, opposed to immediately internally, well, where's that? And like digging deeper into their layers. Like, where is that stemming from? And trying to help them. You might have good intention, but don't do that without consent if you can avoid it, which I know isn't always the case because sometimes our brains or our minds or our energy moves faster than we do.
I'm seeing, as you're talking, I'm getting a picture of things like 5-10 years ago, and everybody being in a room, and like the okay, the time of like the mystic and the channeler and the witch or whatever is really over, in that we are all now this way. Like, we are all coming online to these abilities, and previously I'm seeing that it used to be like you, Megan, if you were in a room with all of these individuals and you are, sorry, loud car outside.
I was
And
about to say, come on, car.
yeah, and you are exercising all of your abilities as an intuitive and as a claircognizant and as a channel, and you're receiving downloads. Now, they're wanting me, I'm getting this image because I think it's important for me to explain why we didn't do this before and why it's important for us to do it now. Before, the masses, in a sense, were really asleep. People were not online. We had these 3D bodies, but we didn't have the ability. No, we always had the ability. We were not consciously hooking ourselves into this larger grid system to be able to communicate energetically with people in this way. And in that setup, in that paradigm, in that foundation, it is very helpful for someone who has those abilities to go into a room of maybe 50 asleep people. And as you're communicating, you can communicate with their higher self. And if they're blocked off from their higher self, what you have to say to them is really helpful. Like, Spirit really wants me to get across how the way that we've been taught to use these gifts, if you have had these gifts for some time, is helpful and appropriate and made sense for that time, because other people were not aware of the ability to tap in themselves. Now, though, they are. And that's what changes. If you are an individual that is cut off from your higher self because you have decided to live in a 3D paradigm that doesn't allow for this woo-woo experience of being a multidimensional being, then having someone who considers themselves a multidimensional being explain your experience from a higher perspective can be really beneficial. But when that person comes online to their own multidimensional self, it then becomes inappropriate, because now you're telling them things about themselves that they already know, that they're already working on, and that they may or may not want to discuss with you. So that's when it really comes into, that's why now we're starting to figure out, okay, where do I end and where does the other person begin? And how can I tap into somebody's energy in a way that's helpful and beneficial, but also consensual? Like, consent is really big. And one thing that Megan and I do is I've just told her, Megan, because I am working on authenticity, integrity, and living in alignment. And boy, do I falter a lot of the time right now, because I'm still in like year one of really, I've been utilizing all these gifts for maybe the last 6 years. This is my first time doing it as an empowered, autonomous being, really working within my community. I have told Megan that she has full reign to read my energy whenever she wants, and that I know that she's only going to be using her powers for the highest good, and that, any reflection she offers back to me, even if it's something that is hard for me to hear, is going to be in my benefit, because there are things I hide from myself. As we've talked about in previous episodes, I'm prone to gaslighting myself. So it's helpful for me to have a friend who can tap into my energy and serve as a sounding board and as a mirror. I wouldn't do that with everybody, but
No, I wouldn't either. But that relationship that we have where we have allowed each other to have that open access has a lot of times allowed us to work through a lot of things that we wouldn't have worked through, because you call me out on my shit, I call you out on your shit. Sometimes we'll set boundaries, like I can tell that this is not the time for you to be doing whatever, and we'll just let each other know. And being in a community or having a friendship or having a relationship with someone where you can express those things in that way and you know that you have the autonomy to tell them the hard things that they don't want to hear. And you can usually tell, I know I can, if it's something that they know and they're not ready to hear, or if it's something that they're like stumbling upon that they need to find on their own, maybe with like a little slight nudge in a direction, but you can usually tell the difference.
And you can hear in the way that Megan's talking, it's like this is her working to assist the people that she loves in her community in a way that's respectful. Literally, like if your friend had food in her teeth and you wanted to tell her, but you wanted to do it in a way that wasn't embarrassing. And you're like, does she know that she has food in her? No, she doesn't know that she has food in her teeth. Okay, okay. Is it just going to be her and I talking? No, no, she's about to go to work. Okay, I need to tell her, and but that's just one example. So Megan and I, it's open-ended and she knows that. And if at any point in time I wanted to go do some inner work that I didn't want her to be a part of or know or whatever, I would tell her. But other than that, it really seems to be a case-by-case basis, and to just pay attention when you're with other people who are operating in that field where you know that they are connecting to the larger aspect of self, to in the moment, if you're feeling drawn into their energy, to just ask, if you can, explicitly, hey, I'm kind of feeling something right now. Is it okay if I tap in for a minute? Or do you want to feel this with me? Or is this mine? Or you can also just ask internally too. This is what I've been doing. Is this mine? And then just see what your heart says. Because a lot of times your heart will answer straight up. It'll be like, yes, no, a little bit, or you're too misaligned to be able to know right now. So go ground yourself.
That's really important. And I want to remind you that just because you have consent to someone at one point doesn't mean you have consent to them at all times, because we are always changing individuals. And it's important to remind yourself that the person that you are today, like if you just think about yourself, I'm not the same person I was a week ago, a month ago, a year ago by any means. And I think that applies to a lot of us because we're all growing and changing. So having those open communications, it's just really important in general, whether it's relating to woo or energy, or just having a general open dialogue with someone and being in a position where you can be vulnerable and honest is really important. But I want to say that it feels weird the first couple of times, but you get used to it whenever you say, hey, I'm tapping into this energy, or instead of having that fight about the ice cream where you can back up and say, I'm not trying to have a confrontation. I'm just trying to like honor you and give you what you want and really connect with you on a deeper level. Even though it's about ice cream, it can be about more than that. And whenever you start to make those changes in the way that you communicate, it's really beneficial. And it feels uncomfortable and weird at first, but it does get a lot easier. And then you find that those connections that you have are deeper or are more meaningful. Those fights that you have, those dumb ones, they change. So instead of leaving something really frustrated, you're able to process things together, and maybe there's something that you never knew about that other person that came to light, or maybe they didn't know about themselves, that you can work through together as a team.
Hugely.
Yeah.
Well, and with the ice cream thing, so wrapping back to my conversation with my partner about, I mean, this is a generalization, this isn't any one circumstance, but where I'm feeling frustrated, but my frustration isn't mine because I'm just hungry. In a real world example of what Megan's talking about would be in that moment where my partner says, what do you want to eat? And I say, I don't know, literally anything. And my partner goes, no, really, I want to know what you want to eat. And if I respond with, honestly, as I'm thinking about it in this moment, I really do not know what I want to eat. And quite frankly, the fact that I don't know what I want to eat, it's just going to be so much word salad and fucking frustration in the beginning, you guys, because this is a new way of communicating and a new way of being, and we're going to stumble until we get it. Okay, so I say, you continually asking me what I want to eat is starting to stress me out because it's triggering me to the fact that I don't know what I want to eat, and that makes me feel inadequate. But as I'm listening to you, I'm feeling really frustrated, and I don't know why I'm feeling frustrated. Are you feeling frustrated? Is this something I'm picking up with you? And he might say, yeah, I'm really frustrated because I just want to take you somewhere that you want to eat. I want to know what you want to eat, and I want to give you that thing because I love you. And then I could say, I'm feeling inadequate because I want you to give me what you want too, but I don't know what I want. And that's triggering me in all kinds of ways. So do we want to sit and talk about this, or do we want to just pick some random place to eat? Because it has nothing to do with the eating at all. And in that situation, it has everything to do with my internal sensitivity to my own lack of understanding about myself, and my partner's sensitivity to wanting to provide for me in a way that he doesn't know how to do because what I want is so unclear. So how frustrating for him, right? And then that's how it works, and how annoying and how like oof and convoluted and like heavy. However, exactly like Megan's saying, literally, and we've implemented this, once you do that, we actually have a safe word now. Once you do that, then moving forward, it becomes a lot easier. And what we've implemented, and what I would encourage all of you to implement, is there are always going to be there are always going to be two layers. I'm simplifying it. There's always going to be two layers of your conversation with your significant others in terms of what's happening. There's going to be the 3D thing that you're talking about, and then there's going to be the emotional experience under that that is the foundation root cause for everything. And sometimes those things will match, and other times they won't. And as we begin to deal with these deeper underrooted, is that a thing? Like deeply rooted things, we're going to be changing the way that we communicate with each other. And one thing that we've done that's very helpful is we have a safe word for, if I am being triggered and I am no longer operating from Lissa as a partner, but I'm now operating as maybe Lissa as a 4-year-old who's scared, or Lissa as a 15-year-old who's pissed and rebellious, then I'm able to say to my partner our safe word, and he knows he's not talking to me right now. He knows that he's talking to some sort of projected version of myself that's wounded and not seeing things clearly. And in my sitting quiet with myself over long periods of time, I can recognize that within me. That's step one. And now with the safe word, I'm able to communicate that to him. So that's step 2. And that's another way of really expressing energetic boundaries, because that's just one word that expresses, you can't read my energy. You're not welcome in my energy right now. I've got my own shit going on, and I need to just sit with this long enough to clear it so that I can come back to you and have a meaningful, heartfelt conversation.
And that's so amazing and so important and so big, because you guys set those boundaries and you worked on a system that worked for you both. And that system might change and evolve as you guys change and evolve. But the fact that you have that open communication and that system, which might work most of the time, might not work in the moment, but it's always a process of growing and evolving, and kind of we're building new systems. Is what's happening in this moment, is we are all creating the foundation for what's to come. And it's so important that we do it out of respect, and we do it out of love, and we do it to really match what works for us as very complicated, broken humans, because we are not always in control. We're not always our highest vibe self. We're not always operating from a place of love. Sometimes we are that 5-year-old that's scared. Sometimes we're the angsty teenager. Sometimes we are just a pissed off regular human being that's dealing with a lot of stuff. And just have some like space for yourself to realize that you're not perfect, have some space for your partner, and have those communication, like have that conversation and that open communication. And as you were saying that, if you're one of our current things in my partnership is that neither of us really like to make decisions, and we want to make the other person happy. But in order for us to make them happy, they have to pick a thing, or in order for like him to make me happy, I have to pick a thing, and that gets overwhelming. So something that I personally implement, and that you might want to try if you're like me and you hate decisions and your partner also hates decisions, is sit down together and make a list of, these are foods that I like, these are restaurants that I like, these are movies that I want to watch, and things like that. And then when you're having those frustrated moments where no one wants to make a decision, You can put it in like a random generator app on your phone. You can have it on cards that you can pull out at home. You can just have a list and like scroll down the list and pick one that like calls out to you, or just like randomly like scroll down and the first one, whenever you scroll, is what you pick. Whatever works for you. But if you take the time to kind of build these little systems in those frustrated moments, you can say your safe word, which we also have like implemented a few different like phrases or safe words for situations. But you can say that word, you can have that phrase, you can just like bluntly say that, I can't decide right now, maybe we should try this, whatever works for you. And then you can have that randomized generated moment where something else externally picks for you. And that can be looked at as just like a way to take that off of your plate. You could also kind of look at it as a divine thing, if you want to, where you're letting spirit choose for you where you're eating. But give yourself a break. It's okay. It really is okay. We all have these moments of frustration. We all have these really complicated relationships that we're all kind of mucking our way through, trying to like be better people. Because as we're growing and evolving and changing and doing all of this work, we're becoming new people what feels like almost every day, where you learn something new, you level up, you're shedding some sort of old trauma, or you're like deep in the thick of that old trauma. And just kind of touch base with yourself, touch base with your friends, your family, your partners, and try to kind of change the way or the tone, because it doesn't have to be the way that it's always been, because you're building the new thing. And it's hard and it's yucky and we're all going to stumble. But with time, how cool would it be if you're able to, with just about anyone in your life, say, I'm sorry, right now I'm kind of like struggling with this inner child thing. I'm working through this trauma. Do you think that we could take some space so I can process this? Or would you be open? Do you have the space yourself to maybe process this with me? And that would be so cool to be able to make that change.
And that's where we're going.
Yeah.
And we're going there out of necessity as well, you guys. And as Megan was talking, I really want to explain why this is important. Because as someone who, I've had previous relationships where this work was not done at all. And the intention of me getting into a relationship where I wasn't doing this work on a subconscious level, I didn't know this consciously, but the reason I was doing it was because I was deeply, deeply afraid of feeling my emotions and on working through these things, because there are very real, this is why it's important to be gentle and kind with yourself as you work through these things. As we work through these things, we are going to find kinks in our chain that is just part of what we've gone through, as a soul in this life. And there are things to clear. And now, as awake and aware individuals, we are going to be clearing these things in our close relationships, because we have that mirror and we have that sounding board. And at first, it sucks because it's really clunky in there. And there's so many things that we have not addressed. And depending on where you are in your journey, as somebody who worked in addiction studies for a long time, one way that I like to describe it is, I'll ask my clients, or did when I was working in the field, how long have you been using for? And maybe they are 32 years old and they've been using for 12 years, right? So then it's like, okay, well then we have 12 years of gunk that's existing within you that is going to be clearing out of your system in terms of things that no longer serve you, like a whole backlog of stuff that's just stuck in there. So I now recognize that these other relationships I was in, while loving and meaningful in their own right with really incredible human beings, I wasn't doing the work very purposely because the work is difficult. But what I want to tell you, which is what I was hearing as Megan was talking, and by hearing, I mean I was seeing the future in terms of where we're working towards. We are turning into, the reason we're doing this now is because we are really turning into a collective where we can communicate in these ways that are, how do you say, like of a larger perspective, of a quote unquote higher vibe, but that's really not the word I'm trying to use. It's an electric and
There needs to be a whole new word, because higher vibrational things or whatever feels like it has this negative connotation to me, because people use it.
Yeah, that's not
Mm,
what it is. So picture that you are a column of light, and that column of light is what allows you to plug into your energetic body. And imagine that in order to plug into that column of light, you have to consciously, with awareness, decide, I am now ready to be all of who I am and to stand in my full power and to take complete responsibility for creating my reality. And in doing that, I'm going to plug myself into this source body of light. And I understand that with that comes an incredible amount of power, an incredible amount of responsibility, and an incredible amount of regular work. And then there are other individuals who do not plug themselves in because they go, well, fuck that, I'm fine, thanks. No thanks, I'm good over here. So then it's really up to us to look around and go, okay, who's plugged in and who's not? And the people that are plugged in, you will understand over time there is a recognition. And in that recognition of the people who are quote unquote plugged in, these are the people that you're going to be expressing boundaries to. These are the people you're going to be asking, can I tap into your energy? Yes or no? Do you want to take some space? Yes or no? And then there will be other individuals, and it's not better or worse at all. There's no good, bad, right, wrong here. But there are other individuals who choose not to plug into that system because it is heavy energy and it does bring up a lot of shit and it does require daily responsibility and daily work and a whole lot of crying and getting your shit together. And you don't need to practice this with them. You don't. You can just be 3D and you can say, like, I don't like the way you're making me feel right now. And so I'm going to choose not to have lunch with you, Karen, and then just bounce out, you know? So
I don't think that you're not doing it with them. You're just approaching it in a different way because it is still important to have boundaries, but maybe instead of saying, hey, is it okay if like we tap into one another's energy or do you have space for this? You could just say, I would like to talk to you about this thing. Is that something that you currently have time or energy to deal with, but not kind of like in a woo way, just in a general, like, I have respect for you as a human being way. And it's still important to set those boundaries with Karen, who you no longer want to have lunch with.
hugely. And let me explain what I meant by that, because there was a reason behind why I said it that way. When you're dealing with another, and this is kind of out there and higher thinking in terms of really, really, really woo. So if you're not following me and if this doesn't make sense and it doesn't resonate, just leave it at the door and listen to what Megan said, because all of her advice was fucking spot on. Other people who are plugged in, we have the ability to do co-creation and energy exchange with them in a way that really benefits both of us, meaning I can tap into their energy, they can tap into mine, we can co-create together, we can sort of unify our field with source together and get downloads, we can dream together, we can interact in this larger grid system where we are all plugged in. Eventually what we're working towards, this is what took me forever to get to, what we're getting towards is a type of environment, just stay with me on this. We're not going to need cell phones. We're not going to need technology in the way that we need it right now because we're going to be connected in a web in a much larger way than we could have ever comprehended. But that's down the line, and we're just now learning the very beginning inner working mechanisms of this thing. There are individuals who choose not to be a part of that. But so when you're dealing with the individuals who choose not to be a part of that through exercising their own free will, it's important to know they may unintentionally try and drain your energy without realizing it. Be aware of that. Exercise your boundaries. You may unintentionally read their energy without realizing that. Be aware of that. Exercise your boundaries. But that's going to be a very different conversation than when you're working with somebody who's existing in this energetic space with you, because that's where it can get really murky, and where you with your partner and me with my partner, we're like trying to figure it out because some of it's telepathic and some of it's claircognizant and all this stuff. Whereas, outside of that, it's much more a conversation and just sort of easier to sift through. But I think that the reason we're doing all of this now is because we are working towards getting to a place with those that we love and with our families and with our communities where we are able to understand each other at a much deeper level. And ultimately, what makes my heart really sing and get excited is we're going to be able to be ourselves all of the time, because people are going to see us for who we are at our core pretty instantaneously, and we'll know right away whether or not we're a match. And the people we're a match to will just harmonize with us and magnetize to us, and it will be incredible. And the people that aren't will respectfully just disengage because they'll see that there's not really an experience to be had there. And it won't be negative in nature. It will just be a not match.
I want to approach this in a way that I think most people will understand. Maybe it's a bit before your time. I don't know the age range of everyone listening, but we are currently building the foundation for this new thing. We're currently building the foundation and the rules, and it's all brand new. And I want to look at this kind of like the start of the internet. So when people first got the internet, it was very exclusively used for specific things, primarily for work and data and processing and scientific research. And then as it became more publicly available, as the cost of computers went down and there was access provided to more people, they started to build their own rules and kind of build on what that foundation was. So a lot of the things that we have now are based on these foundational things that other people created. How does a website work? How do we interact in a forum? What is a chat room? And which evolved into text messaging and messengers and voice messages and video chat and all of these things that are so beyond what they ever could have imagined. But a lot of these things that people did as more people came online is they built on the foundation that other people established, and it went beyond any of their wildest dreams. So if you think about the 90s or the 80s and the way the computers and the internet worked, and you look at what we have now, it is night and day. And it's hard to see all of that foundational work that someone else did. But when you really look at the root of how everything originally was created and what foundations they laid, you can see exactly, like if you were to have like a translucent film and you laid what we currently have over that, you can see where it's connected. So right now, we're the people in the 80s and the early 90s with the crappy dial-up where everyone's trying to figure it out. And down the road, instead of having dial-up where you have to make a sandwich, while your page loads because it takes so long, and now if it takes more than 5 seconds for a page to load, I get frustrated and move on sometimes. So we're going to be getting to this really big, awesome place. But right now it's kind of frustrating and we're adapting and we're all learning and we're all sending our first emails, which, would be the telepathic and emotional and heart space connections that we're making. And it's really cool and it's really exciting. And it's all like this brand new frontier that we're facing and creating and building together. So there are big things coming and I can see them down the road. Just remember that we're all kind of new at this and have some space and some grace. And not every thing that we build now is going to be exactly how it looks 20 years down the road. But know that we're all doing this big, awesome work. And future generations are going to be so grateful that we did.
And you guys, we're the ones building the internet in the 80s. How cool is that? Megan, thank you, thank you, thank you. That is the best example that exists. I could not have explained that better myself. Thank you for taking all of my confusing mess and making it so clear, because that is exactly how it feels. It is exactly how it feels. And we're just going to be the ones that are sifting through the muck until it becomes easier and easier and easier. And eventually it will be seamless. So just stick in there. And like, you guys, we're doing really hard work. It's going to bounce back and forth. Sometimes you're going to feel great and like you're really in it. Other times you're going to feel like, man, I'm lost and this doesn't make any sense. And what the heck am I even doing thinking about these things? It's all part of the ebb and flow. We're here. This is literally why we're doing this, is so that we can all share in our experience together.
And the reason that the internet is so much better now is because more people tapped into it. More people literally got online and experienced it and then had their own unique perspectives and ideas for ways to improve it.
And it will just keep growing.
Yeah.
Just like the internet keeps growing. Our website, woo as fuck, is not .com. It's .space. It's .space because the internet is now so big, there literally needs to be new spaces. Literally, like it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, they literally just came out with a bunch of new TLDs a few years ago. I want to say it was 2 or 3, but now, because time is so weird, maybe it was like 5 or 6. because we were using up all of the .coms and .orgs and everything. So they came out with a list of hundreds of new TLDs, .space, .music, .me, whatever. And whenever we were building our website, I spent so much time going through all of the available options, and we had a lot of back and forth about what to use. And what felt the most accurate was .space, because we are holding space for you. You are holding space for us. We are literally holding up a piece of that internet space as a collective. And it just felt so in alignment with what we were doing. And honestly, when we started Woo as Fuck, we had no idea where this was going, and we still don't. We're just kind of letting ourselves go with the flow. All of this is an experiment of doing what feels in alignment, what feels in flow, and we're learning as we go, and hopefully you guys are learning with us.
Yeah, literally every morning whenever we record, we tap in and we're like, what do we want to talk about today? And it's pretty much figured out right then and there, which is really counterintuitive for both of us because we're both over planners and over organizers and overthinkers and, ADHD. But I have found personally that this is really just the way of how things are going to be. And what's really important is to learn how to go with the flow. And I do want to say one thing before we sign off here, because I want everyone listening to know this. Okay, so you guys, my business, my counseling business, I want you guys to be able to follow along in this process, because if you're interested in working with Megan or with me, I think that this will be a fun thing for you to see, which is our evolution as we continue to work on our own projects so that we can inspire you to really do your thing. Because that's what we really want to do, is just be like your cheerleaders, very, very literally. So I am going to be taking my day job, my 9 to 5, and I'm going to be either reducing my hours or quitting completely. That part's still undecided. My counseling business is now going to be revamped by Megan. She is going to be redesigning all of my website, all of my everything. So if you go and look at what it is right now, and it's lissarosecounseling.com, that's what I made. That's what is my best representation of myself, basically. And at this point in time, which will continue to be fluid. However, Megan has a channeling service. Well, Megan has all kinds of services, but one of the things she does is intuitive branding, basically, and like website development and all kinds of stuff. So Megan knows me really well and is able to tap into what I do energetically really well. So she is going to be this won't be until August. So whenever you guys are listening to this, I'm taking some time off in August, but mid-August, maybe later for, deadline purposes, give everybody some time to finish what they need to do. But I will have an entire new website, okay, with booking services and all of that. And when you see that, that will all have been Megan's creation based on what she knows my services are. So this is us trying to really change what we do and using it as an example so that you can see it's possible, meaning I am going to eventually be leaving my 9 to 5 completely. I'm stepping away now. Megan has already done that. She is part-time work, but she's also been stepping away from quote unquote the man, and no longer has that 9 to 5. She will be redoing my website. That will be an example to you of what is possible in terms of how we can be our authentic selves and what we offer. Because that's what my request is going to be from her, in working with her to create this. I just want to be seen as me, presented as me, and I want my services to be open-ended and based on what the client needs. And she does very similar work with her website. But this is sort of the journey that we're on. And I just felt like it was important and on subject because this is where we're moving towards is like more authenticity, more integrity, and more collaborative components so that we can really accomplish what we want. Because I cannot represent myself in a way that is true to my core in the same way Megan can because of the abilities that she possesses. And when I'm open and willing to, really invite that into my life in a way, then that can benefit me as well. So that's all I want to say about that. So stay tuned because that'll be really exciting for you guys to see the metamorphosis of that and how things are changing.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I'm really excited for you to make that move forward. And I'm looking forward to making those changes to the way that you're outwardly presenting yourself. So it's more of a reflection of who you are at like your soul core level. And because of what you just said, I kind of want to be like more open and vulnerable about what I'm doing right now too, because this is a journey. We're all going through it together. So back in May, I stepped away from my full time 3D job. I, in addition to that, had a part time design job with an agency. I upped my hours there because I had them pretty low because I was working a lot and then also doing other things. So I did up those hours a bit to help with the transition. So I still do have a 3D job, but it's in design. It doesn't have set hours. It just basically is here's a project, here's the due date, have it finished by the due date. Um, and I have been working on picking up some client projects that are more in line with what I want to do. My ultimate goal for the end of the year is to not have corporate clients. So right now I work with a lot of people who are designing things for basically what is like what we're moving away from. So I do a lot of marketing work, I do a lot of ad design, I do a lot of course design, I do a lot of stuff for LinkedIn, um, and I do a lot of corporate branding, things that are kind of a reflection of where the system is, or really where it was, not where it's moving to. And I want all of my work by the end of the year to be primarily with people who are doing things that make their heart sing. So I want to still do a lot of the things that I'm doing, but I want my clientele to be completely different. So for those clients, I actually have implemented like an energetic clause, which in my contract, which is a whole new thing and it's kind of scary, but I want to make sure that we're always in alignment. And I want to implement only working on projects when it feels in alignment. I want to change my whole project management and deadline system. Like we have like an end goal that we come up with together, but I give myself a lot more breathing room than I normally would because normally someone says they want something, I give it to them the next day. And I want to move to where like I have a week so I can do it on a day where I feel called to work on that day within that week. So it's scary to give myself a little bit more breathing room because I'm so used to planning my days out so hyper specifically. But I want to move into a place where I'm more like I'm listening to myself and I'm listening to them as well. And I don't want to design things that everyone else has. I want everything to be more intuitive. Like with branding, I want to actually implement sigil work and infusing intention. And it's not just like a brand, but it's a literal sigil that represents, you know, your intentions, your business, and who you are as a person. If you're designing a course, I want to actually help you tap into like what the collective needs, opposed to this is a your standard how to sell things to people on LinkedIn sort of course like I'm doing now. So with my business, I have so far, since May, booked 3 energetic projects that are like within the design realm, which isn't a lot. It's not enough to like fully step away from it, but it is huge progress. And it fills me like my cup up so much that I'm really looking forward to changing the work that I do. And I'm really called to work with people on a more energetic level too, because I can do so much more than just design something or help you plan something or help you implement something, which I'm really good at. I used to, like, I've implemented systems that Fortune 500 companies are using now, but I, I also want to work with people on an energetic level. I want to do readings. I want to do whatever the fuck I want to do. If I'm being honest, if I feel called to do art, I want to do art that day. If I feel called to do design, I want to do design. I want to leave everything that I do open ended. But as far as my journey goes, I'm on the start. And I want to be transparent about that because you guys might also be at the start. You're not able to support yourself fully with what you're doing. So maybe if you can see us grow, then, you know,
This
you'll
is
have that
where,
confidence.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Oh, I'm
Megan, but
fine. I'm finished.
I wanted to scream so loudly at I was given an image of a ripple as you were talking, and I wanted to be like, do you guys hear what she's saying? And here's why. Because what you're doing with your work, oh my God, it's so important. I cannot wait for them to see the evolution of like what was my shit to what is now, what will be my shit, because basically you all know me through this podcast in a somewhat intimate way. We're only on, I mean, we haven't recorded that many episodes. We're not even through whatever season one's going to be, but this is hours of content. So you have an understanding of who I am. If you look at my website now, it's really not an accurate reflection, but I don't know how to make it that. Megan is going to be able to make it a literal, actual reflection of my energetic self, that 5D self, that etheric body self, that thing that I'm working with other people in that plugged in space. So Megan has a really gift and talent at letting the center point of the ripple that you're creating for your business, for the thing that you're making, that is an accurate reflection of you, and it's in alignment with what your intention and your goal is. So as it ripples out, it's going to be attracting those that are a match. And I think that that's where a lot of businesses get it wrong, and a lot of us going into business for ourselves get it wrong, because Megan, quite frankly, has the balls and the bravery to redo the system because she knows how the system works. A lot of us don't understand the inner workings of it. And so we think when we go into business for ourselves that we have to follow this template. But that template, you guys, is literally designed to manipulate the masses into thinking they need something they do not. And what Megan is doing is she's creating a new template so that you are an accurate reflection of who you are, so that you send out a ripple into the universe and those who are a match just find you. So energetically, it is in integrity in a way that we are not taught to be in integrity. And so I'm just really excited to see how more and more people will move into this type of way of being, and how much more opportunity we're going to have because of it. And the ways in which we are going to be abundant are going to expand tenfold, because I know personally, Megan, from the clients that you've talked about working with, you're able to be your biggest self and really do your best work because you aren't limited in what you can offer.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And I want to remind all of you that just because something's been done a certain way, or other people offer things in a certain way, or you see this person who's an influencer and they do it that way, so of course that's the way it's supposed to be done. Just build the new thing. Do the new thing. If your heart says that you are meant to exclusively work with dogs with a disability, and you are empowering those dogs and connecting with them and helping their owners care for them better, and it's never been done before, I don't know if that's a thing. But if there's a thing that your heart is called to do, just do it. Build the thing. It's scary, and I know that it's like who's going to buy this, but there's a market for everything, and you don't have to negatively influence them and make them feel like there's a lack that you're filling, because there's naturally, you're not going to be called to do something if there's not someone somewhere and their soul is calling out for someone who does something a certain way. It's okay, just be yourself. And I know that's scary, but I want to be transparent about where I am because I want you guys to feel more comfortable about where you are. And I know Lissa does too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's my whole thing in my business. It's so funny how both of us are very much in alignment in what we do in very different ways, because my whole thing is, who are you? Do you remember who you are? Who are you? That's really it. That's kind of what it comes down to. Is every single counseling session, every single channeling session, every single tarot session I have is always, you've forgotten some core aspect of yourself, and let's help you remember that so you can make decisions from an empowered place. And it's really pretty simple at the core.
I know it's simple at the core, but you have a unique perspective and ability to really channel and tap in and be there with the person and provide that information in such a loving but firm way that is uniquely your own. And I'm really proud of the work that you do, because it's so good. It's so good, you guys. And I know this sounds like 20 minutes of us just promoting one another, but we're not trying to do that. We're trying to just be transparent and really open ourselves up so you can see maybe lessons for yourself or things that you need to hear. And so you can also be a part of our journey.
And so that you can also hear us accepting
Yeah.
positive words about ourselves without going like, "Bleh, bleh."
Oh yeah. That's a big thing for me because I hate compliments. No, I used to hate compliments. See, right there, I automatically want to like recoil anytime someone says something positive about me. But I'm really making progress. Lissa said all of that really cool, awesome, nice, wonderful things about me. And not once did I think a negative thought about myself. And
That's
that's big.
big. That's really big. That's really big. Good job, Megan. Good job.
So, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we sign off?
Um, no, no, I think that was really incredible. Just learning how to, yeah, this is all just learning how to work with new powers that are online, you guys, and it's a
Yeah.
really exciting thing. But we need to take responsibility for it because otherwise, it's just going to be it's going to be dial up for years, and we're just going to be making so many sandwiches, and we're never going to get anywhere with it. You know?
Yeah. And I am really excited for you guys to hear this. It was a lot of fun. We had a few different topics that felt related, and the way that they flowed together was just awesome. I'm really proud of it.
I do actually have one thing I want to say. I'm really proud with how it flowed too. I think that that was incredible. One thing I would like to implement into these episodes as you were talking, because we've done it 3 times now where there's some type of homework. And I want to change the name homework because we all have an adverse reaction to that name, right? But the homework this time, which I'm going to call a tool for your toolbox. So I would like us to every episode, which we've already done naturally, but I would like us to keep doing it if it comes up and if it's in flow, to be adding these tools to our toolbox, and then I can start keeping track of like what's in the toolbox. So in today's toolbox was making a list of your likes, of the things that you like what restaurants you like, what food you like, where you would want to go if you were asked where to go, so that you already have an understanding of these things like when you're dealing with your partner and stuff. So basically just having a preset list of your likes and dislikes that are in alignment, that are true to your core, so that when you're in a triggering situation with a partner or a friend or whatever, you still have these like solid known things about yourself that you can return to.
That's a great one.
So that's
And
this week.
I'm going to add to that with thinking really hard about how you're communicating with those around you and maybe some changes that you could make. You don't have to make the changes. I know that that part's hard, but maybe just take a moment to really evaluate how you're having those conversations, what maybe arguments that you have on repeat that never really feel like either of you are understanding one another. Where are those coming from? Again, you don't have to do anything, but just think about them.
Yep. Yeah, awareness is number one, you guys, becoming conscious of it. We can't do anything about anything until we're conscious of it, and that's where the work is at right now. And we're all doing every single episode, I'm going to say this, we're all doing a really good job. We really are. We really, really are.
So good job, everyone. Thank you guys so much for spending some time with us. If you want to work with me, however, you can see me at megaruski.com. If you feel like you want to have your own free listing to do your dog reading and connection or whatever it is that you're building and doing, you can do that at thewooCommunity.com. It's a free listing for yourself without any artificial barriers about having to have a website or any certain system set up. And where can they find you, Lissa?
You can find me at lissarosecounseling.com. I also have an Instagram, all things woo. And what else was I going to say? There was one other thing I was going to say. Oh, and then our Patreon, you guys. So we're doing collective read. I'm really excited about these collective readings. If you're not on our Patreon, if you're interested, one thing that Megan and I have both been doing is these collective readings. We each do one a month and we upload them. We were already talking about that earlier. Oh, excuse me, one a week. Yes. So yeah, quite a bit because we each do one a week. And I'm telling you, this has been the highlight of my week is filming these. It's so funny. It gets me through my work week and they're always just really impactful. So if you feel called to that at all, check it out. You could always just sign up for 1 month and see if it's like in your wheelhouse or whatever. And if it's not, just not resubscribe.
There are absolutely no hard feelings here. If you join and you decide that it's not for you, we're fine with that. The goal of the Patreon for us is first and foremost to provide some like extra cool bonus content that we're called to make. We're trying not to limit it, because if one week we want to do something a certain way and the next week change it completely, just, every week we're trying to provide a piece of content individually. But a second goal from that is just for us to eventually be able to just live in alignment and step away from all of the obligations that we don't really want to meet. So, like for me, that's working with corporate clients. For Lissa, maybe that's having an additional part-time job while she makes a transition. But
Yep.
every single like person that joins is just helping us get a step further. And I really think that the content that we have um, is funny and raw and real, and will always be evolving and changing as we decide we want to do new things.
Yeah, and always in flow and just freaking fun, you guys. I'm telling you, it is my mojo, like my spiritual mojo for getting through the week is now being able to provide these readings for you. I've always kind of secretly wanted to have a YouTube where I do this, and to be able to have a private platform that's only people who are invested in what we're doing allows us to tap into that collective energy that much easier. And it's just a lot of fun. Check it out. Check it out. That's all I
Yeah.
gotta say.
So thank you guys so much. I'm really excited to hang out with you guys again next week. I hope that you're all having a wonderful day, and I'm going to sign off. This is a really awkward ending. Bye.
Bye, guys.